What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast from Indianapolis. We are here at the NFL Scouting Combine, all kinds of things to talk to you about this week. We're going to have multiple podcasts, but here on this episode, two great guests. We've got former Patriots offensive coordinator Charlie Weis. We also have former Patriots director of player personnel Nick Caserio. All kinds of questions still swirling about how this Patriots coaching staff is going to look, who is going to be in what roles. I thought both of these guys are really interesting people to speak to on that particular subject. Charlie Weis connection is obvious. The Patriots right now without an obvious offensive coordinator. So what kind of challenge lies ahead for whether it's Joe Judge or anybody else that's going to be a first-time play caller? How quickly will they be able to get adjusted to that role and get adjusted to getting into the flow of a game and thinking on their feet? Charlie Weis was great on that. And how much is on Bill Belichick's plate now? Now, in this stage of his career, how challenging will it be for him to handle a staff with so much turnover? Will he be able to spend as much time as he needs to with the quarterbacks, with the defense, and on special teams? Nobody better than Charlie Weis to talk about that particular topic and that particular coach as well. So let's get right to our interview with Charlie Weis, and then after that, we'll talk to Nick Caserio. All right, here with former Patriots offensive coordinator Charlie Weis. Charlie, the Patriots coaching staff is all the talk up in New England right now. When you look at the staff that they have, obviously Bill at the top, but they've added Joe Judge. It sounds like Matt Patricia might be more in the mix with Josh McDaniels gone. How big a challenge do you think it'll be for this group to make up for that loss in Josh McDaniels?
Well, the one thing we do know is Bill has a plan. You know, we don't need to know what the plan is, but Bill has a plan. So we've heard the rumors about Judge is going to be working with the quarterbacks. I have no idea whether or not that's true or not. You know, I don't know how they're going to plan it out. But I do know that when I first got in the league, Matt Patricia worked with us over on offense. He was working with Dante with the offensive linemen. So if Matt Patricia were assigned to work with the offensive line, that would probably be a very strong positive. Joe Judge has worked with the offense before, so him working with the offensive skill positions, that has merit there too. As far as how the whole thing's going to piece together, you know, I'd be guessing just the way you are.
Well, one thing that you mentioned, Dante Scarnecchia, he told us last week was good coaches are good coaches, and you know, implying that they'll be able to figure it out. But how difficult would it be, say, if, and now we're into speculation mode, but if it was Joe Judge who hasn't called plays before, if that was a role that was tasked to him, how difficult would that be for somebody in his position who hasn't coached quarterbacks at the NFL level, hasn't coached plays at the NFL level, to be dropped into that role?
Well, he's made special teams calls. You know, it isn't like he hasn't made calls before. I mean, you're always asked that question until you actually do it. I mean, my first time calling plays was at my first year with the Jets when I left with Parcells to go down to the Jets. And everyone thought Ron Earhart was calling the plays when I was calling the plays because, you know, Parcells kind of wanted to buffer you some in case it didn't work out so well. But you never really know how a play caller is going to work out until after they have to do it because you have to think fast now. You have to react fast. You have to think fast. It's a different world when you're the play caller. Designing them is one thing, but calling them play after play, that's something totally different.
How long did it take you to kind of get into that flow where you felt comfortable with it?
Well, we did well the first game, so the first game was fortunate for me. It was a very productive game in the first game.
So, but it's something that you can have a natural instinct to be able to execute right away.
That's right. Yeah, I think that play callers can be developed to a certain level, but you know, just like anything else, either you can do it or you really can't do it.
Knowing Josh McDaniels the way you do, how big a loss is this for the Patriots coaching staff?
Well, I mean, the fact that he's been there for so many years, that, you know, you have that continuity, but the continuity in the system's been all the way from the time that I was there. There's been so much continuity. I think that, you know, you'll miss that, and, you know, you can overstate some things, but you'll miss the continuity that Josh brought and the level of, you know, the level that he was at, because he's developed into a hell of a designer of offense and play caller as well. So will that be missed? Yeah, that'll be missed. But that's what happens in this league. Good guys move on to be head coaches, and somebody else steps in to take over for them.
Given where Mac Jones is, Charlie, and I know you were high on Mac Jones before the Patriots even drafted him, and he is, by all accounts, a beyond his years types of quarterback in his understanding of, the mental side of things. But is it asking too much of Mac Jones in year two to also be working with potentially a new play caller, new quarterbacks coach, as he's in this important part of his development?
No, this is going to be part of what happens in his career. So, I mean, in Alabama, they were rolling through coordinators every year or two. So, I don't think Mac will struggle at all. I think that Mac has a very high ceiling, and I think that he was off to a very good start, and I think that there'll be a nice progression from year one to year two, regardless who was calling the plays.
Do you think that ceiling is enough in today's game? We hear about athletic quarterbacks and arm talent and off-platform and things like that, but he's a little bit different style quarterback.
He was one of my top two quarterbacks in last year's draft of all those guys, him and Trevor Lawrence. So do I think so? Obviously, I thought so last year. He did nothing to have me change that.
Looking pretty prescient now when it comes to that call by you. The last thing I want to ask you, Charlie, just knowing Bill Belichick as you do, and with all this coaching staff turnover, is there maybe too much pressure on Bill to make sure that everything operates the way that he wants it to with all of these changes?
I don't think Bill feels any pressure. I mean, he's been doing this too long and he's too good. I don't think he feels any pressure.
Is part of the he's been doing it a long time. Like you said, he's in the later stages of his career.
I don't think he feels any pressure. You can ask me another way, I'm going to give you the same answer. I mean,
maybe pressure is the wrong word, but in terms of energy, I mean, do you think he has the energy that it would take to handle as many changes as it looks like they're going to have?
I think the energy level goes up for him in a situation like this because he likes new challenges, and this is a new challenge.
No doubt. Charlie Weis, thanks so much for being with us. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Say hello to everyone up there in New England for me.
We will. We miss you. All right, great stuff there from Charlie, and as advertised, now our conversation with Nick Caserio, who I think is a good person to talk to when we're talking about this Patriots staff because he had an interesting career path himself with the New England Patriots, where he starts on the coaching side as a coaching assistant. He gets into the front office, into the scouting side. He then was named Patriots wide receivers coach in 2007. Very experienced group there. He had Randy Moss, he had Wes Welker, but a new group that was still learning the Patriots offense because those guys were all acquired that offseason. But I just thought it would be interesting to ask Nick Caserio about that transition because it's the kind of transition, it's similar at least, to what some of these other coaches that are on the current Patriots staff might be going through, whether it's Matt Patricia, potentially going to the offensive side, Joe Judge going from head coach with the Giants, special teams coordinator, onto the offensive side for the New England Patriots in some capacity. So really good insight here from Nick Caserio, who also provides us with some insight on the energy levels that he has seen from Bill Belichick and just how involved Belichick is on every single aspect of this Patriots system and this offseason approach to this day. Let's get to Caserio right now. Some interesting things happening on the staff, I'm sure, as you know. How difficult a transition was that for you to go from your role to a completely different role one season like that?
Yeah, I would say because I was kind of so immersed in the things that were taking place offensively, the transition maybe wasn't as big as it appeared on the surface, going from kind of a personnel role to more of a full-time basis. Mm-hmm. So having experience in the system definitely helped. Having experience with Josh, I'd say certainly helped. Yeah. And I'd say our relationship, was a part of it. So I think there's Bill had enough confidence to give me the opportunity to put me in that position. I would say if that didn't work out, I probably would have continued, doing the things that I was doing anyways.
So I wasn't covering the team when that happened. Were your offensive responsibilities previous to that season kind of what they were when you went back to the front office, like helping them on game day?
So
and things like
02 was specific, offense quality control.
Okay.
03 to 06, kind of national scout and then pro scouting director. But then 04, 05, 06, I was still doing some things on game day relative to communication with Josh. So having an understanding of the game plan, having an understanding of the terminology, having an understanding of the system, what we were doing week to week, I was able to kind of stay up on that information. And then after the 2006 season, kind of when there was more changes, and then we were trying to figure out, okay, how do we fill that spot? You know, it was a conversation I think I had with Josh and I had with Bill as well. And then in the end, we felt like, all right, it wouldn't be as big of a transition as maybe finding somebody else externally. So I had to actually allocate really on a full-time basis. You know, I would say there was less evaluating, less personnel responsibilities, and it was, weekly, daily game plan, opponent tapes, defensive back write-ups, those types of things.
Having had that experience, does it surprise you that Bill's kind of, it looks like, handling the staff the way he's handling it, where they lose this offensive coordinator who's been around forever, and now it's just kind of, at least from our perspective, it's muddy right now.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak for Bill. Yeah. I would say Bill always has a plan and a vision for what he wants to do, and if he feels like whoever's in that position has enough capacity to handle the responsibility, then he's not opposed to. He's not going to be opposed to doing it. So I think ultimately he's going to do what he feels makes the most sense, and he's not going to put somebody in a position that he doesn't feel is capable of handling the job.
Well, and so Joe, from what you know of Joe, and I know Joe played quarterback, and Bill has said that to us before, and feels like he could coach any position on the field. Would it surprise you if he was working with quarterbacks, knowing what you know of Joe?
Yeah, I don't want to get into exactly kind of who's doing what. I would say Joe's a good coach. I think Joe can handle a lot of different roles and responsibilities, whatever they are. I mean, he was one of the better special teams coaches in the league. So, I mean, Joe's a football coach. Joe can coach football. Joe has a big picture understanding, I'd say, of a lot of different areas and topics. So, in the end, whatever the decision is, I'm sure, it'll make the most sense for everybody involved.
The last thing I want to ask you is just about Bill. Are you ever impressed or surprised or amazed, maybe to a degree, at just his energy level? Because it does not feel like, even though, I don't know if he's 70 yet, but he's about to be, it does not feel like he's slowing down.
Yeah. I would say I don't know if there's a coach more immersed in the overall process from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, from playing and prepping the team to team building and roster construction, as Bill. I mean, honestly, he'll probably get on in history as one of the most, I would say, greatest coaches and overall team builders in the history of our sport. So I have a lot of respect and admiration and appreciation for what he was able to do for me, the opportunity he provided for me. So I think his ability to continually adapt and adjust is probably one of his greatest strengths. That's probably one of the things that he probably doesn't get enough credit for. And he's going to figure out a way to do things that make the most sense for his team, I'd say, on a year-to-year basis, but also balancing off short-term with also kind of big picture things.
Hey, really appreciate it. Thanks a lot. All right, great stuff there from Nick Caserio. Really appreciate him spending some time with us. Charlie Weis as well. Hopefully you guys learned something from those conversations. I know I did. And really, at the end of the day, that's what matters, right? No, just kidding. You guys are always at the top of the mind. For us, we want to make sure that we are bringing you the freshest, most relevant content that your brains can handle. And we know you can handle more, which is why we're bringing you another podcast later this week. We'll have NFL Network's Judy Battista filling us in on the conversations happening behind the scenes when it comes to the competition committee and how the game might be changing. Is overtime going to change? Is the punt going to change, and how would they try to make that work? How about taunting? Is that rule going to go away the way we hope it will? I'm not sure you're going to love her answer, but you are going to love that conversation. We're also talking to Pro Football Focus's Mike Renner. He is loading us up with Patriots fits in the first and second round at receiver, corner, and linebacker. Three of, I think, what you all would consider the biggest Patriots needs. Right now, nobody better than Renner to give us the lowdown on that. So keep an eye out for that podcast, but thanks for listening to this one, and we'll talk to you very soon.